Welcome to Story Planet, where every tale is a journey and every word is a step closer to peace. Here, we leave behind the rush of the day and enter a world where time slows down, where each story is crafted to soothe your mind and carry you into a restful night. Tonight's journey will take you to a quiet hilltop where the windmill turns slowly in the breeze and a peaceful life unfolds in the gentle hum of the countryside. Take a deep breath, settle in, and let your thoughts drift like the wind across the fields. Together, we'll step into the world of Edith, whose simple life by the windmill is filled with quiet moments, warm bread, and the kind of peace that comes from being connected to the rhythm of the land. Let's begin our journey, where calmness awaits just over the next hill. The windmill on the hill. On a quiet hill in the middle of a vast, rolling countryside, there stood an old windmill. Its wooden blades turned slowly in the wind, creaking softly with every rotation, as they had done for as long as anyone could remember. The hill itself was covered in soft grass and wildflowers, the land stretching out in all directions like a patchwork quilt of green and gold fields. The hill and its windmill were a familiar sight to the villagers who lived below, a comforting presence on the horizon, standing watch over the valley. At the base of the windmill, nestled between the stone foundation and the hillside, was a small cottage. It was a simple home with a thatched roof and a chimney that puffed out gentle wisps of smoke in the evenings. The woman who lived there was named Edith, a quiet soul who had chosen this peaceful life long ago. Edith was known in the village for her kindness, her love of the land, and her skill in baking the best bread anyone had ever tasted. Every morning, as the sun began to rise and cast its golden light across the fields, Edith would wake to the soft creaking of the windmill. It was a sound she had grown to love over the years, a steady, rhythmic reminder that the world was turning and life was moving forward. She would dress in her simple linen clothes, tie her graying hair back with a ribbon, and step outside to begin her day. The first task of every morning was to check on the windmill. The old structure was sturdy, built generations ago, but it still needed tending. Edith would walk up the small stone path to the base of the windmill, her boots lightly brushing the dew-covered grass. She would place her hand on the warm, weathered wood and listen to the gentle hum of the wind as it turned the blades. The windmill had a comforting presence, like an old friend, always there, always moving. Inside the windmill, the air was cool and still. The stone floor was worn smooth by years of footsteps, and the walls were lined with sacks of flour that Edith would grind herself from the wheat grown in the fields below. The millstones turned slowly, grinding the wheat into soft, fine flour, filling the air with the scent of freshly milled grain. Edith would spend her mornings here, listening to the steady turning of the millstones, the rustling of the wheat, and the soft murmur of the wind outside. Once the day's flour had been ground, Edith would return to her cottage to bake. The small stone oven in her kitchen was always warm, its fire stoked with wood she gathered from the nearby forest. She would knead the dough with her hands, feeling the softness of the flour mixed with water, salt, and yeast. There was something meditative about the process, kneading, shaping, and waiting for the dough to rise. The scent of fresh bread would soon fill the air, warm and comforting, like a hug from the hearth. When the bread was ready, Edith would wrap it in cloth and walk down the hill to the village. The path wound through fields of wheat, past wildflowers and tall grasses that swayed gently in the breeze. Edith loved this walk, the way the land seemed to stretch out forever, the way the sky was always so wide and open above her. She had chosen this life for its simplicity, for the quiet connection to the earth and the rhythm of the seasons. The villagers were always happy to see her when she arrived, her basket filled with warm loaves of bread. Edith was a quiet woman, but she had a gentle presence that made people feel at ease. She would chat with the villagers as they bought their bread, listening to their stories and sharing her own. There was a sense of community here, a shared understanding that life, though simple, was rich in its own way. Once her basket was empty, Edith would make her way back up the hill, enjoying the peacefulness of the afternoon. The windmill was always there, its blades turning slowly against the sky. In the evenings, Edith would sit outside her cottage, watching the sun set behind the hills. The light would turn soft and golden, casting long shadows across the fields. It was in these quiet moments that Edith felt most at peace, most connected to the world around her. One evening, as she sat by the fire in her small cottage, there was a knock at the door. It was a rare sound. Most people didn't make the climb up the hill unless they had a reason. Edith stood and opened the door to find a young man standing on her doorstep, looking tired and travel-worn. His clothes were dusty from the road, and his face had the look of someone who had been searching for something, though he might not have known what. "Good evening," the young man said with a shy smile. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I've been traveling for a while, and I saw the windmill from the road. I wondered if I might rest here for a while, if it's not too much trouble." Edith smiled warmly and stepped aside, motioning for him to come in. "Of course, you're welcome to rest here. Please sit by the fire and warm yourself. I was just about to make some tea." The young man entered the cottage and sat by the fire, his eyes reflecting the flames as they flickered in the hearth. Edith bustled about the kitchen, boiling water and preparing tea with fresh herbs she had gathered from her garden. She set a steaming cup in front of him, along with a plate of bread and cheese. As they sat together in the cozy warmth of the cottage, the young man began to talk. His name was Leo, and he had been traveling for weeks, unsure of where he was headed. He spoke of how he had left the bustling city behind, seeking something quieter, something that would help him find peace. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he knew that the noise and rush of the city wasn't where he wanted to be. "I saw your windmill from the road," Leo said softly, his hands wrapped around the warm cup of tea. "It seemed so still, so peaceful. I thought, maybe, this is the kind of place where I might find some answers." Edith listened quietly, her heart full of understanding. She knew that feeling, the desire to leave behind the chaos of the world and find something simpler, something that made sense in its quietness. "I came here many years ago," Edith said, her voice gentle. "I wanted a life where I could live with the land, where I could find peace in the rhythm of the seasons, in the turning of the windmill. It's not a life for everyone, but it's brought me a kind of happiness I didn't know I could have." Leo looked into the fire, the flames casting shadows across his face. "It sounds like what I'm looking for," he said softly, "but I don't know if I could live so far from everything." Edith smiled kindly. "You don't have to live on a hill or by a windmill to find peace. Sometimes it's about finding a rhythm that works for you, something that feels right, that makes you feel connected to the world around you. For me, it's this windmill, this cottage. For you, it might be something different, but the peace is there if you listen for it." Leo nodded, the weight of his travels seeming to lift from his shoulders. He stayed with Edith for several days, helping her with the windmill, the baking, and the simple tasks of daily life. In that time, he found a sense of calm he hadn't known in the busy city. The slow turning of the windmill, the soft rustle of the wheat fields, and the quiet routine of Edith's life gave him the space to reflect, to listen to his own heart. When it was time for Leo to continue his journey, he thanked Edith for her kindness. "You've given me more than just a place to rest," he said. "I think I've found some of the peace I was looking for." Edith smiled and placed a warm loaf of bread in his hands. "The wind will always guide you where you need to go," she said, "and you're always welcome here, should you need a place to rest again." As Leo walked down the hill, the windmill's blades turning slowly behind him, he felt lighter, more at ease. The road ahead no longer seemed uncertain. It felt open and full of possibility. The lessons of the hill, the windmill, and Edith's quiet wisdom would stay with him wherever he went. And so, life on the hill continued, as it always had. The windmill's blades turned slowly in the wind. The fields of wheat rippled like waves, and Edith baked her bread, tended her garden, and lived her peaceful life. She knew that the answers people sought were often closer than they realized, that peace wasn't something you found in a far-off place, but something you carried within you. Each evening, as the sun set behind the hills and the wind whispered through the trees, Edith would sit outside her cottage, listening to the quiet hum of the windmill. It was a sound that reminded her that life, in all its simplicity and stillness, was enough. It was a life she had chosen, and in its quiet, steady rhythm, she had found a happiness that filled her heart with every turn of the windmill's blades. And as the windmill continued to turn gently in the evening breeze, and the last rays of the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, Edith sat quietly outside her cottage, feeling the peacefulness of the world around her, the soft creaking of the windmill, the rustling of the grass, and the distant call of an owl in the forest all seemed to blend together into a quiet symphony of serenity. It was moments like these that reminded her of the beauty and simplicity of how the most meaningful things in life often come from slowing down and finding contentment in the present. And so, as you, dear listener, come to the end of this story, I invite you to take a deep breath. Let the gentle rhythm of the windmill, the quiet hum of the world around Edith, and the calmness of the countryside settle into your heart. Life can be busy and full of noise, but like Edith, you have the power to find peace wherever you are. Sometimes it's in the sound of the wind, in the warmth of a small home, or even in the quiet moments of reflection before sleep. Remember that peace and calm are not distant, unreachable things. They are always there, within you, waiting to be discovered. No matter where you are or how busy life may seem, you can always come back to this place of stillness. Whether it's through a gentle walk in nature, a few deep breaths before bed, or even the soft turning of an imaginary windmill in your mind. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, know that the same calm that Edith feels on her quiet hilltop is available to you. Let your thoughts settle like the blades of the windmill turning in the breeze, slow and steady until they become as soft and peaceful as the night. You are safe, you are at ease, and the world will continue to turn gently as you rest. As you close your eyes and imagine the soft creak of the windmill, the gentle hum of the countryside, and the peaceful rhythm of Edith's simple life, I hope you can feel the calm settling within you. If this story brought you comfort and peace, I invite you to share that feeling. Be sure to like the story. Share it with someone who could use a little calm in their life. And subscribe for more peaceful bedtime stories to help you unwind and drift off into restful sleep. Good night, and may you find comfort and peace in the simple moments wherever you are.